It's so quiet, the crickets are just loving it. Nothing scares them. Nothing to worry about. Why is that? How is that? Because I say almost every week now, this is at a time, what we're doing, what's being done to us has to be thrown off or we will be consumed by it. The consumers that we are. But I think we actually might have a proof as to why. We actually have an answer. Maybe we'll be able to focus our attention on something. And by the way, thank you, JJ, for an inaugural broadcast on ucy.tv. Thank you very much for coming back on. Hope you can make that a lot more consistent for yourself, and I hope you can work that out because it's an important voice that you have to bring. And there anybody else who has something that you have to say, you really need to find a place to start saying it. And I would always ask us that we continually work to bring our quality up, whatever, whether it's sound, audio, content, perceptions, engagement, techniques. Because as I keep saying, this is not just how much you know, it's how much you apply correctly with about what you know. And as I try to bring out, it seems to be now, I guess it is about every broadcast, we start showing you what's brought before us as facts and evidence and things may also not be so good either, that we have to learn to discern. But we may have a study as to why we're suffering what we are suffering, and that just also gives us the opportunity to resolve it. Scientists, Earth endangered by new strain of fact-resistant humans. Boy, Satan came up hot and heavy in that one, didn't it? Fact-resistant humans may be our problem. Scientists have discovered a powerful new strain of fact-resistant humans who are threatening the ability of Earth to sustain life. A sobering new study reports. The research conducted by the University of Minnesota identifies a virulent strain of humans who are virtually immune to any form of verifiable knowledge, leaving scientists at a loss at how to combat them. These humans appear to have all the faculties necessary to receive and process information, Davis Logsdon said, one of the scientists who contributed to the study, and yet somehow they have developed defenses that for all intents and purposes have rendered those faculties totally inactive. More worryingly, Logsdon said, as facts have multiplied, their defenses against those facts have only grown more powerful. While scientists have no clear understanding of the mechanisms that prevent the fact-resistant humans from absorbing data, they theorize that the strain may have developed the ability to intercept and discard information en route from the auditory nerve to the brain. Quote, the normal functions of human consciousness have been completely nullified, Logsdon said. While affirming the gloomy assessments of the study, Logsdon held out hope that the threat of fact-resistant humans could be mitigated in the future. Our research is very preliminary, but it's possible that they will become more receptive to facts once they are in an environment without food, water, or oxygen, he said. So, how are we going to do that? We just got to feed them a starvation diet, and we might be able to remove the fact-resistant human gene. Maybe we should go to Monsanto, dye chemical. Maybe we'll go to the pharmaceuticals. Maybe they'll have a drug that'll get rid of this obstruction to the fact-resistant human. Maybe they'll make a vaccine. Fact resistance. Interesting concept. Who would have thunk it, folks? But, in fact, this is what our problem is. Remember, information is important. Knowledge is really important. But is it true? The knowledge you have, is it true? Another side benefit of actually engaging your knowledge is you test that out really, really quickly. Unlike science. Unlike a lot of things in our life now. And it's just amazing how this thought keeps coming in my mind over and over as I talk about these things, and as this week I was talking to people and things, that it was told to us way back when, 30 years ago, more maybe, that there will be a time in the future when you will not be able to trust anything on its face. And you kind of think about that at the time, and it's just like, that's somebody's paranoia for sure. Now look around you. Like they told us you're going to go into an ice age back then. And then we get this nonsense of global warming, and then we find out about geoengineering. We were saying it was there, and they were denying it until they couldn't deny it anymore. The UN stepped up had to agree to it. And I told you, be careful, because if the actual reality, not the model, but the reality is we're going into a ice age, however minor, then all this geoengineering, these what we call persistent contrails, would actually be interfering with the heating and the retention to the extent that it could accelerate that into that point. And not to bring up too many side channels, but then all of a sudden now we're seeing these big corporate globalist types, governance types, collecting seeds to put them away, already put them in the freezer, as it were. And you kind of look around and say, well, maybe there's a different type of plan. So what were the facts? We don't even know. And so this is the problem. Even if you're not fact resistant, you can be fed a bunch of nonsense. And it's getting more, for all the blessing of having the access. I go anywhere there's an internet connection, my voice can be picked up. Is this an awesome, just an awesomeness. I don't even know. I'm just stunned at the thought that we have the capacity to touch anybody else with this technology and talk to them at least, and maybe not talk with them, but to them anywhere. In the same token, we have the ability to communicate and reach out, and we're probably not, to the most part. Certainly not so many behind the woodshed. That we also have the problem of understanding the sea of information that may or may not be, well, there's a lot of garbage in the sea. It takes a lot of work to filter through it. And a lot of my questions I get to answer, really my answers end up being a little different in response to what I have found, at least for myself, than to be what's the popular notion. That this fact problem, even if you're not a fact-resistant human, if you aren't the product by whatever that has caused the dulling of the sense, the obstruction to your own, the prejudice to your own future, that the facts that you suck up and take up and absorb may not be, except that they do exist. So they are a fact that they exist, but as the content of the fact, the truth, becomes the problem. That this is what I tell you all the time. It's very important. I can't tell you how. I wish I really could convey when the revelation comes to me. I wish I could convey that revelation of how important it is when it finally came to my mind. This really is what we do indeed. Not what we talk about, not what we type again. Unless we're typing to do something with that typing. And it addresses the like I say, the wrong that you want to make right. And I ask you just to choose one. In fact, I've had this conversation with quite a few people this week. I'm really getting down and reduced. I don't have the time to talk anymore about a lot of things. I don't have the time to blame anybody else. Really, I'm just looking for someone who's interfering with someone else or myself wrongly, and I just call them a criminal. And I've had a lot of conversations this week. I don't care what they call themselves. I don't care what they call me. That's just a criminal trying to evade the law. I don't care who they think they are. I don't care what they call themselves, what they believe, or anything. If you're harming somebody, and I know what we're looking at is kind of a narrow field, maybe, until you see that it attaches to property, until you find out that property is attached to very high level, international level, treaty level obligations in what even the fabricated government, even the fiction we call government, has these things that people inside are to honor or find themselves being criminals, that we have lost the concept of accountability. I don't mean that we got to go blame everybody. I mean that inside us, we never really, for our generations here, accountability has been lost in something as an expectation of our responsibility. We've been told we can't take the law into our own hands. We've been told that some public official must do it. Like our interim chairman at the district, and we had a meeting here this last Friday. A lot's happened in the last month, and a lot of pretty energetic things happened. But we sent out a show cause to the federal government agency, and he immediately gets a phone call. The interim chairman gets a phone call, and they did all kinds of trying to intimidate and threaten. I did not think we were going to get in communication with them, but I certainly didn't think they'd do it. Be that stupid that we now have a whole bunch of new federal felonies to make record of. That I'm suggesting to you, if you just get involved, they hand the victory. Maybe not the instantaneous victory, but they hand the resolution to you. If we would just go back and say, there is an accountability, and it's up to me to identify whether or not it's a crime, what's going on, and then arrest it. And let me suggest to you, if you want to go find out this obligation that we have, if you needed the law, if you needed more proof than what's inside you, what moral parts of you are still speaking in you, you can go to the government, the fictions standard, and go find it. Go read it at 18 USC Section 4. When you see a crime, you're supposed to go tell someone who can do something about it. And so there's your license. And why you do that anymore? Because the criminals are in the seats of decision, and they'll make you a criminal. And so you have to go very cautiously through the battlefield that you're not the one that gets the wounds. And when you find out you have a duty, an obligation and duty, quit shirking the responsibility. Don't cringe so much like I continually do over the term citizen. Just embrace the fact that you're in a group of people called citizens of the United States. That you're in a society that embraces a certain lifestyle, a certain law set, a certain implementation that has been overthrown. The occupiers of which are absolutely easily found to be committing felonies and worse, treason and worse. That should be all your license to get involved. And then you're somewhat, again, in a lawless, occupied state, you're actually dealing with the military oppressor. So nothing is guaranteed. That said, there's something that protects us. So if there's any kind of a latent fear, I'm not so encouraged to say that you're absolutely free of any liability. Absolutely not in a war. But they called it Battlefield America for a reason. I just finally admitted what the condition had been. And it was up to the people to throw it off. And I observed the least path of resistance is to go ahead and take the system as we find it and just reapply it in the way it was supposed to be applied. The things that are not being applied, because those things are the decision of the occupier, because we've let them make upon us the imposition that we cannot take the law into our own hands. And I will then refer you right back over, maybe not to take it into your own hands at the federal level, but let me identify for you the ability you have to go to your browser, hopefully one that's not Google. Maybe one that uses Google, but anonymously and through proxies at least, that you go research your own state law or statute or corporate code, whatever you want to call it. It's there. They still have to recognize it. And you find that the part that says that a private party or private person, as they'll say, has the authority to arrest, no different than anybody else. And so this is where we're going, and this is where it's taken some time, and to show you how removed we are from our own society. It's taken time to get to the most logical and interesting points that people used to do in the 1800s, used to do right as a matter of fact. Now, I'm not saying that was necessarily justice, but what kind of justice do we have now more than what we see going on in the courts that was what you would have heard in the stories, was a horse thief being hung. As I move into, and I wasn't going to touch this, but there's just a couple little things I want to have us focus on. that show us the occupier in the system, and it's right there for us to grab up, that I don't hear too many people talking about, but it's okay. It doesn't matter whether we talk about it or not. Are you aware of this? What is the distinction really between the hanging the horse thief, and let's just say he was the one that was hung was the horse thief. And you have to understand that's another whole other concept, that the land was important, your property on the land, the things you need to survive, like your horse was sacrosanct. So much so that taking someone's horse was as if you killed them. Similarly with the self-defense appliance, we don't call it a firearm because that's got a federal definition. So central to people's lives back then was cows and things like that. They didn't they didn't wait around. They got it, and I know there's some pretty horrendous stories about the people that you get caught up and someone used that power to actually get at somebody. There's those stories, but let's just talk about the legitimate ones where someone's coming to steal your horse. That's like that's like killing you. And so the penalty was pretty swift, and the penalty was pretty absolute. That I don't see any really different. It's just that the oak tree looks a little different, the rope looks a little different, and you're hung and strung out just as much when you are now deemed what they call and have redefined to be a terrorist. That we are devoid of facts, we are devoid of the need to listen to facts, we are obstructed by the seat of decision in the Bar Association judges of seeing all the facts, the whole truth and nothing but the whole truth, such that we can make it. That this Tsarnaev sentence, if you haven't heard, the kid was given the death sentence for the so-called marathon bombing. And I don't want to really get too much more into just exposing just two things that just kind of keep sticking with me. One is, we know, and I don't know that it was given to the jury or not, and I would suspect that it probably was not. The Boston Herald, or whatever that paper was, that issued a tweet or a notice that this was a drill, and some other information that came down that it was a drill. That's always been a problem in my mind. Now, this kid may have done it, but to my mind, you have to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. That I just wonder. I always have a problem with that part. And there's some other evidence that people were saying it was a drill. Now, I don't know. I'm not making that decision. I'm saying that would have been enough to put doubt in my mind if I was a juror. If that was true, what was going on there? I don't even need to be in a conspiracy theory to get that. But what got me really on this case ultimately, and it's something that we've been fighting and actually have our injunction against, the Bar Association. The seats of decision in your life, whether or not you realize this. And I mean in toto. There's nowhere you're going to go that some Bar Association member, whether they be a defense prosecutor or judge, legislative assembly or lawmaker, they're everywhere, or sitting in the decisions of the agencies as they act, giving them the wink and a nod about coming after you, whether or not they want to recognize, in disregard of property, they've committed to. I've got the documents now. If I didn't have them before and we didn't sue about that, we now have the proof of it all. I sent out some links on the Twitter behind a woodshed that you can read the documents. They're committed to enforce Agenda 21, UN protocols, the Johannesburg Treaty, the Rio Accord. It's this agency, this trade association, in the seat of the decision of your life, is committed since 2000 at least, and before it certainly. But they've come out and made resolutions by their House of Delegates that they will commit to support the Johannesburg Agreement. That's Agenda 20. That's sustainable development. That is this thing we sued to enjoin. That is, again, showing you the seats of decision called the Bar Association are controlling your life. And so I get over to this Tsarnaev thing. And, I came on record to say, how is it? And now I'm going to ask whether or not, why isn't the question being asked where the plea was not guilty and the so-called defense attorney in an opening statement comes out and said he'd done it. How is that not at least malpractice? How is that actual advice of counsel? How is that not actionable by the government itself to throw this attorney in jail? But what outcome were you expecting when you when you go to court and you say, well, I'd done the dastardly deed? What do you expect for an outcome? Dad, I have a real problem in the fact of the representation. Now, I know we all know that, there's no defense attorney. I mean, this is not unknown on me. I'm almost talking rhetorical. This was a travesty. If you think that there's justice before a trade association that rules your life. These are all terms and words that are for your consumption, you consumer. That it just sickens me at some point. This is just the ongoing illness that we agree to. There's so much about these things that doesn't make it. There's so much interference. There's things within the jury pool, jury pool itself that's so wrong. I've explained some of that. Like, you're on the jury pool because you have a driver's license. What does that mean? Well, that means you're in commerce, and you've agreed to come under the laws of the state. What does that mean? It means that your jury is a bunch of privileged people that are in servitude to something. They're not free people. And it means you must be a commerce entity, because your peers are commerce entities then. So does anybody else put this stuff together? I don't know. But that was all controlled by the Bar Association. So, these things bother me, but there's nothing I can really do about it. I'll tell you, I hope maybe someone within the sound of my voice eventually. Remember, we got the blogcaster, I'll get the content. We got the podcasts, they go all over the place. You can download them, you can pass them around, do so. Send this off to someone and ask the questions if you think you have an answer. Why don't you ask someone else who doesn't understand or may have a different answer? What about this point? Maybe you can be the one that advances this and works this out for Sarnaev. We also don't know the underpinnings. This is, to me, just the idea. We know false flags. We know this whole setup. We know that this is a death penalty. This is a fast way to get rid of a 20-year-old kid like Timothy McVeigh. He's in, gone, and done. How often does that happen, folks? Don't these prisoners, they want to keep in forever? They keep them in forever. They have endless appeals. Why are these people that are involved with these very questionable conditions here and gone? And how easy is it to to talk to him, listen, you just sit here, be quiet, watch the show, just watch the Dog and Pony show, enjoy it, and when it's all done, we will move you on and through, and the only problem you'll have is you'll never be able to put your face out in a couple of places in the world. This is problematic, but from the standpoint of what this reflects, what this shows to the world, is we have a Bar Association system that supposedly has this defense attorney who comes out, and the opening voice of that defense is no defense at all. It's admission contrary to the plea. That I don't know why someone just hasn't picked this one up and said, listen, that was a faulty defense. Let's stop this thing right now. But you see the system, no attorney steps up and does that, do they? See, they can't bring shame upon the brotherhood. They can't bring shame upon the brotherhood, even if it's felonious, treasonous, and just morally, just a natural moral wrong. They will not speak up. Given this is a psyop, the kid's fine. The kid will be said, "Oh, we killed him. Oh, he was twitching when we pulled him out of here, but we killed him." And then you won't hear from him again. Somehow he'll pop up and have the rest of his life. You won't even know he's out there. He'll be a protected witness type thing. You'll never find him, and he'll live the rest of his life. If this is legitimate, that they actually took this kid in and did this to him, this is but I can't. I don't even know the word's strong enough here. Can I use the word sin? Would that be a good enough? Is that appropriate? Is that politically correct enough for most people here? Concentrated evil. That we're sitting here as crickets. We get involved with all the extraneous stuff. And what I want us to focus on is who done it, folks. Who done it? And I want you to, when you focus on who done it, then you figure out how you go after arresting it. And a lot of people don't want to do this. And I don't blame you, but I don't want to either. And it just so happens I have some people around me that allow me to continue to do this, and I give honor to that by dedicating myself to do what apparently I'm able to do. And in some regard, it's not just me, because I know when people really listen to what I'm saying, and then if they have questions, and they should, and ask me, and we get into even very summary dialogues, I can, as I've told you before, trust me enough to put you on the path, trust me enough to kind of give you a heads up on what you're going to find, and then go seek out all the stuff I may not have known and bring it to your own. And in the process of doing that, you will make your mark on the beast, no doubt. No doubt in my mind. But you got to do there. You got to step up. You got to say, this is the trail I want to go down. And one of the rules is we don't lose anybody. No one gets wounded. We don't jeopardize ourselves. We do nothing that outwardly is of risk, actually. And part of that is being prepared. Part of that is training yourself to the truth, not training yourself to some notion. Being able to identify the notions real time and have a very summary statement in your mouth about how to counter that. And a lot of times it's not an argument. I see lots of people, we got to argue this and we got to argue that. No, I don't talk from argument. I don't make issues. We state the fact of the crime, and you've just made a complaint that's actionable. That's all you need to do. Now, I see a crime going on. I can't dissolve myself into everywhere. I can't be everywhere. But this has really got, because I know it's on the point of the spear here, going after the Bar Association, that nobody in this sees a problem with the immediate denunciation of that plea under the color of a defense counsel. That's a crime I can't imagine, actually. And that's giving credit to it so that we can actually work that system over for the crime that it is. If it's a false flag, then we're all being played for a different reason, and that's a different problem. That's the treason problem. That's the occupation problem. And I know I don't explain it too much, and I don't get too depth right yet. But you've heard me say we've figured out at least a couple of ways in order to defeat that, to bring it out. And one of the things we did is we didn't make an issue. We didn't create a question for any of these people to make a decision on. So these facts are very, very important. What facts you look at, what facts you make important is important. And you're not going to do that unless you find an objective, some mission to carry out. And so and I know people are listening to me, and I know they're appreciative of what I'm saying, and they're trying to make sense of what I'm saying in their world to apply in their world, which is you have to do. But you can't sit back so long and be inactive so long while your society, your way of life is being transformed right before your eyes, and it gets to a point you may not be able to make the change when it's time because you tarried too long. And when you tarried too long, you also you lose the time that I already know you would accelerate your learning as soon as you engage. I'm just suggesting again, as soon as you engage, you realize what the truth is and what it isn't really quickly. And it allows you to cut through all the nonsense, like all the stuff I hear on the internet, all the questions I say, well, let's go look here and look there. I look at the information. I go, well, no, this is not correct. I know immediately. Why? Because I've done the research. I've read it myself. I've got the black black and white in my eyes. I've thought about how it works. I've applied how these things work. I saw a court case. It was handed to me here for the Supreme Court. They're asking for a writ of certiorari to ask the Supreme Court to take the case up. They're arguing whether or not the United States District Courts can expand their jurisdiction to include Article 3 cases. Well, obviously, that's a properly formed question to get the answer. Well, no, they cannot. But I looked at that, and there's 101 pages I'm reading through with all the submissions and everything. And I asked my colleague, I said, well, couldn't this been, instead of filing 101 pages, wouldn't this have just been easier to file a writ of quo warranto? Require the judge to determine that on the law? Why do we go through all this nonsense? Unless it's an attorney and they're making lots of money on every word. Again, the seat of decision and positions of control of your life. And that decision is stated wrong, and it comes out wrong, and then you're left to live by the wrong question, not knowing that your case has not been determined. And that this whole case law nonsense is exactly that, if not a crime itself. That we don't allow the actual facts to come. They are destroyed by the system. It's a regulation. It's a regulating device. They keep the occupier uses the judicial system, or your notion that it's a justice, as a pressure regulator, because they know some of us who figured it out, we're going to believe we have justice, we're going to go to them and they'll give us the answer, and it's all really just all a psyop and a social engineering experiment that they already have in control, and you're not going to be able to change it too much. And so when you go through the normal channels, I've learned not to do the normal channels within the system. So our results are completely different than what most people would actually get, and they're analyzed completely different. That I know once you get involved and see what the scoop is, you don't have the questions. You don't have to learn more about learning more. You just jump in, and as I was telling someone else yesterday, you don't ever get to your point. You don't ever start to do anything till you have a basic understanding of the condition, and then you go in slow. In other words, when we just filed our document against the Secretary of Interior to show cause how they're not committing felonies and treason, the failure to show cause of which is admitting and confessing, we're not calling anybody a felon or committing treason. We're saying we have a probable cause to believe, give us the lawful warrant we may not have, before you agree that you've committed these crimes, you made the conduct that's felonious and treasonous. And so there's a way that we wade in. I've learned for those of us I work with, that we wade into the problem that we're not only unfamiliar with, that we're beyond our actual experience to execute, but we have every right, because we can find all the laws that says it's our responsibility to execute, that we don't put ourselves in actual risk. And in fact, when they try to respond to that, and they do it wrong, and it's real easy for them to do that, because they're not supposed to respond to it at all, actually. And then when they do, we add more and compound the felonies. That there's no actual protection, because the system is an illusion. The laws are an illusion. What you're working on is their perception of their guilt and their accountability. Did everyone understand what I just said? Did you hear what I said here? There is no system. It's a fiction. The system is set up before you is a fiction. It's an illusion. What you're working on is whether or not the people you deal with will feel the accountability on the back of their neck. And your job is to put the breath of the accountability on the back of their neck. That's probably the most important thing I've said in all the time I've broadcasted. So how do you bring the accountability on the back of someone's neck if you won't know the facts are right, don't know the law, you don't know your rights, you don't know anything, you talk about opinions, and you don't apply yourself. You just whine and complain about it. You just type stuff up on how it doesn't all work. How is that engaging that system to bring the heat of accountability on them? At least the record of it, folks. That's all. Like we were talking here on the Jefferson Mining District meeting. I said, right now we're preparing to take the action it takes to make the arrest, but we're making the record. We're laying the foundation for the lawfulness of this for those that would deny the law and those that absolutely are ignorant of it. That's probably the second most important thing I've ever said on this broadcast. And I guess what I'm getting to is I'm starting to appreciate what it really takes to actually get stuff done and do it in a way, in a battlefield where anything you do, you can be wounded or killed. Because I don't take a lesser stand than that when we're dealing with who we're dealing with. And I did that because I felt it was prudent to do so. Take the worst, take it for the worst it can be, address it that way, and the rest should handle itself. Now, there's no guarantees, but it's been working pretty good so far. Now, you can't, for those that feel no accountability at all, you're going to find out how quick you're in that war, and you're going to find out what war really is. And you'll figure out the oxymoron really quickly of what the law of war is when they find out that when you find out that they're going to take every measure to destroy you. And so that's where we get to the point where you have to have a few more than you that are dedicated to watch each other's back and know what's going on. And, that's going to be a varied thing. These facts that we get, the facts we fail to collect, the record we fail to make. I tell everybody, become the investigative reporter. When you're faced with an authority, become the investigative reporter. Get your paper out, get your recorders, get your videos, take notes, ask questions. Don't let them ask the first question. They ask a question, you ask another one to do your record. You give your law in answer. You remain silent on everything that they're talking about. But if there's not going to be investigations to find out the facts. Even where you have defenses that are not defenses, and some facts come before the jury and they rule on that, this kid's going to be dead. What about the other side? The other side just deny or don't ask, and so we get that. It's been 6 months since Tamir Rice died, and the cop who killed him still hasn't been questioned. Is that justice, folks? Is that the seated decision in the prosecutor causing this ability for his soldier in that martial condition, in that military condition, to be protected? And if that's the case, how come instead of riots and rioting and going outside and throwing a sign up, how come a whole bunch of people in that place have not just established the lawful standard and thrashed the officials for not complying with the law and causing an omission of their duty to cause an injustice? Remember, the omissions to act where there's a duty is as much a felony as the commission. Tamir Rice dies. That was that one where the kid who had an airsoft gun or something. He didn't last not even a half a second between the time the cop drives into the Central Park where he's standing, opens the door and shoots him. He's 12 years old? And there's video on it. This 12-year-old did not have a chance, and the cop had every opportunity to not, and they didn't. And the prosecutor and the judges and everybody who's an official who sees a crime is obligated to tell someone to report it, and then the obligation, depending on the class of wrong, in this case felony, is required to be investigated. That all the officials that are looking at this are all committing crimes. And I hear crickets. I hear people talking about injustice, and I hear people whining about the fact that there's been no investigation and all this, and the sheriff's department's not doing it, all this nonsense. Instead of moving with the law they can find in their state to say, you had a duty to do better. I don't know about your job, as I've said over and over, so I don't care about your job. I want to know what your duty is. Your duty is actionable to me. Tamir Rice has died, a 12-year-old kid dies, no threat to anybody, and the cop that shoots him, literally in cold blood, no notice. If I could win this on the fact that there was no due process in the interaction, because there was no notice, opportunity time or place for Tamir to make a decision and get the due process he was required in law to potentially protect himself with whatever his response would have been. He got no notice, let alone the opportunity to respond. In other words, freeze. Drop it. That this is not being investigated, and we are crickets on it. I don't say we, I mean some of us. I can't spread myself so thin. I can just tell you someone needs to be told about this, and you need to have a bunch of a core group of people that are going to go after this kind of thing to bring accountability to the system that's committing felony by omission. And the laws for that are in every state that I can find. Mark on the beast at yahoo.com if you can't find theft by extortion, coercion, dereliction of duty, trust breach, on and on, folks. It's on and on. Speaking of trust breach, the buffoons in Washington, the facts that they try to tell us that we have to filter through this nonsense. That's why you got to have a better filter so you don't even have to wade into. I don't wade into a lot of these things. I don't know if there's something happened this week. I'll move on here. Something happened internationally. This is an immense failure that came up that I don't know if anybody's talked about or not, in what context or anything. I saw this and literally my jaw dropped. That the facts of the things that it does and tells its people, and the things they'll accept as a sponge without criticism. And the monies that are spent to go over there. Into Europe, into now the Ukraine, and the setup that's going on, and all the governmental and corporate interests and international interests that go in to run that country. United States officials in that government. The Ukraine western side. Instigated by the West. Probably instigated by the Zio West. Aided with by Britain in their support. That the news this week, talk about all the facts that you had to wade through that were no good facts, and I think I did a pretty good coverage here behind the Woodshed without getting too deep into geopolitics, but showing concern and explaining certain things about what was going on in Ukraine. And the buffoons from the United States that are working that, and how well Putin has been doing the job. How well they're handling that. Kerry tells Lavrov of Russia, John Ketchup Kerry tells Lavrov of Russia the Ukraine shouldn't be a pawn. As he goes over and talks with the Russian foreign minister as they work out this condition that the United States caused, that apparently the United States has figured out it's malpositioned to do anything over. To expose to you the fact that you can go to the bank, hopefully the dirt bank, because that's the only place the gold's going to be. The rest of them are owned by these people, the IMF and all these World Bank governance people, that the United States is committed blunders over there, that they are going to lose terribly if they advance. That Kerry goes over there and now makes it like he is making the observation and protecting Ukraine, that the Ukraine government should not be used as a pawn against its offenses against Russia. That I just reading on the story, I won't read it, but the Russians and the people over there there was no question to them what that meant. The buffoons in United States, if this was a game, absolutely the pawn. Remember, we were talking about Putin being a chess master. Kerry comes over and says Ukraine's not a pawn in a game that they started that they lost. This was a chess game, geopolitical chess game. They all knew it. And the United States lost. And now they're going to try and figure out how to back out gracefully. Well, I don't know if they can. And that could be a trick too. But this is an immense story. This is an immense showing of the United States extending itself in places it ought not have ever gone, and it's an immense showing of its failed abilities, its lack of capacity to actually be diplomatic in the world, which should bother people in the United States of America very much. Just from a principle standpoint. Kerry comes over and says, well, Ukraine shouldn't be used as pawn. They're the ones that created that. An immense story. Immense. It's beyond my comprehension at some level, how big that little statement is and what it's actually stating and admitting and confessing, that the United States is just completely incapable. And we watch this stuff, and this is going on everywhere. This is the kind of, I guess for me, this is the kind of action that goes on everywhere. The denials that go on. The facts that are denied, that are pushed underneath the perception and awareness, and we allow it as a nation. We, as the people, allow this nonsense. If Ukraine is not supposed to be used as a pawn, then why do the United States make it a pawn? Why have we tolerated it when we saw it as the people? The crickets, folks. And we now have an answer, that there's a whole species of subhuman that actually may be the mass that is fact resistant. We may be doomed. More facts that are omitted. Interesting stories that pop up. Why your mind, your memory has to be longer than last week. And I can't tell you that I'm doing such a good job as I got so focused on things. You just pick up on what, and you remember things that you're focused on because it's just so much to have to keep up with. However, in the peripheries of all my interests and the things that I do, facts that are omitted, facts that are declared entitled to be other than the facts that they really are to mean, the content. Oh, they're a fact, but the content was failed. Why we have to learn to discern at every point. Why we can't take anybody's opinion at any point. Why I tell you to go get the black and white, even of the corporate code, the occupier's code, the administrator's code, whatever. There's things in it that you can use, regardless of their actual legitimacy. They're legitimate to the extent that you're having to be dealt with by it, and that is the rule that they use, and so you have to address it that way. That these facts and these conditions and the overplan that we don't understand and all what's going on evades us because we've just been so compliant. We've just been the little consumers, consuming, sucking up. We've been the little sub-parasite, absorbing like sponges, whatever they want to give us. And we quietly believe, and we seek that's a nice quiet summer night, and we rub our little feet, and we be the crickets because everything's fine. At the denial and the objective facts we need, the lack of good information, the lack of us to do more investigation, and the amounts of things we have to start seeing. This is why it requires most of us anyway. But for me, this little story here is really more of an annoyance to me. Because so many in whatever, I mean, it doesn't matter. Any media that was out there that had a news to tell was all over these things. I'm speaking now, moving on over to the facts, the real facts about Fukushima, the real facts about the nuclear power industry. What I told you early on when everyone was saying Fukushima was attacking, I said, but it's impossible. The weather patterns and ocean patterns can't have that happen. You're looking at they're using Fukushima as the scapegoat for your poisoning, radiation poisoning here in the States and everywhere actually that they have any nuclear technology. That I told you at the time, and I can't prove it at this point because it was on this was on a hard drive that failed. That I can't get it added. I'm going to take a lot of money to get the information off of it, and then you have to know if you can save that part. That I told you a long time ago. I had satellite evidence. Just happened to be watching at the right time. Remember, and I'll give you a link to this, the Toronto Sun, the day later, acknowledges that a fact that Fukushima radiation had hit Ontario in Canada. And I came right on the next time I had the ability. I said, no, that's a lie. The fact is that it's not from Fukushima. Fukuzilla's not doing this. This is them covering up exactly what I'm telling everybody is being covered up, and Fukushima is the scapegoat, that the Davis-Besse nuclear plant had off-gassed a cloud of whatever. Didn't know from the satellite, the thermal infrared imager that it was anything. But that Davis-Besse had off-gassed a cloud that went right over Ontario. And they registered it. And that was I told you that was and they call it the very first time that they had been radiated. Why I'm talking about this and these facts that they give us that we can absorb and, oh yeah, okay, fine, this is the way this is working. There's no danger. No, I think nuclear power is pretty cool. I think fusion and actually in cold fusion is probably even way, way cooler. So I'm not against the technology necessarily. I'm against the implementation of it. And you know that it's federally regulated, and the federal regulation is the bottom line. We all know that. Clint Richardson did an excellent expose, if people understood what he was showing you, in Corporation Nation. That this Davis-Besse just had another off gas, another steam leak. They claim it wasn't nuclear, radiated, excuse me. But I wanted to point out, see, this is how many years hence. This happens a lot. Now, if they're now not wanting to show that it's kind of known that it's not Fukushima, this time, do you think the government, who was looking to blame Fukushima on the radiation over Ottawa, Ontario, do you think that they maybe keep their mouth shut of whether or not this was even got radiation in it? And they would take the lead from the United States that, oh no, it was just steam, to let you know there's more facts that we don't know the content about is true or not. That this is actually happening all the time, confirming what, again, over and over, and all the things you can see, that we're doing this to ourselves and blaming other things. That those of you around Ohio should be concerned. Any place around these nuclear facilities, you should be concerned. As I said, I don't have a problem with the technology. It's what we do with the systems. It's how we run the systems. It's we do have a waste problem that's there's not a dime put in it to figure out. And I'll tell you something without getting all too deep into it, and I'm not prepared to even talk more about it. I know of some things, about 3 of them, that wouldn't be an actual problem, but you have to understand, as I've told you, the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act are not acts of Congress to clean the water or the air. They're just licenses to pollute those a little bit, somewhat of whatever the standard is. The pollution, the cleanups are also the fact of the threat of a hazardous area is a moneymaker. That they don't want to cure that either, just like they don't want to cure you of any supposed disease. And the fallout of which derivatives that they come out to cure these the collateral diseases, the collateral ills, also makes industry money, GDP. Remember, I don't know if anybody puts this together, but the GDP is whatever the government spends, and so if you have a big expenditure you need to put on hazardous waste for the EPA, that makes it look like your corporation as a government, it's doing quite fine. It's just spending money. I find it interesting that no one talked about when we went to Gobzillion, we were the richest thing in the universe, and why do we have a problem? Fix it. But we didn't. So that should have, again, the fact of the content value of the fact tells us the truth. That the fact that's presented is a lie. That we need to be starting to pick up of this. Again, this Davis-Besse steam leak, I told you about that problem. They now admit that it steams out. I told you last time that in 2011, I got the Toronto Sun back up. You'll see it if you want to remind yourself of. If you haven't heard it, you'll be able to see it the first time. They then blamed it on Fukushima, and it wasn't. It was actually Davis-Besse. And now we know they do, if you didn't know it before, that they release steam. And they do a lot more than that. And then another article comes up now. Someone else is paying attention. A recent Ohio nuclear plant shutdown is a tip of a much bigger radioactive iceberg. It's here, folks, is what I was telling you that the Fukushima was to covering up the nuclear radiated countryside that you live in is on the verge of really being pointed out. So I don't have to read it. I mean, I just pull these things together to give my mind an idea to focus on. You can read. Someone else is looking over and doing a lineage of all these problems with the nuclear industry. And the facts of which are not being actually told to us. If you think that it's coming from Fukushima, you think the problem's over there, and you don't consider it's literally right down the street, if not under your feet, folks, is what the point here is. Not that I don't interested in the technology. It's just that we have to deal with certain things in certain ways. And there's certain license. The government gives over to crime. It's powerful enough to sanction crime. And I don't mean sanction in the definition that means stop it. I mean the sanction to allow it. Now, interesting word means two opposites. Should tell you we have a problem with the English that we were told we were so independent of. Again, the language is all key to understand. And as I've been trying to explain to you that are interested to see it and listen very carefully, for as maybe informal as this comes out, that I've told you that when you, like for us, being a mineral estate grantee, being a grantee of a mineral estate grant of Congress, when you confine your language to the acts of Congress, of what it is you have, what it is you maintain, what it is you're doing, and don't allow in a language foreign to it, like what an administration, like the BLM would throw in. That language acts as a shield. It acts as a jurisdictional shield that people don't appreciate until they begin to use it. You may have all the knowledge of something about how it's supposed to lay out, and you will not appreciate this fact until you go to use it, and then you find out that what I'm saying, that part works. Not that you had your knowledge that worked, but the application in that particular way. Your constraint of the issue to what you do, in distinction to what they're blaming you for, is the jurisdictional challenge that you need to make and make a record of. Because they take advantage. They'll take advantage of you. As I was talking about the sugar pine mine, more stuff going on there. Apparently the BLM had bought 3 new drones. Apparently now there's 2 less. So I guess there was a skeet shoot for skeet drones going on, I guess, out there at the sugar pine mine. Don't know exactly for sure, but we know that the 2 drones were lost. I'm not so sure if I understand that it exactly was the BLM's drones. But this is what's going on around. That group of miners have commingled the language and kind of got themselves into a little bit of a problem. We'll see how they work it out. I'm hoping the best for them. That you confine your language to what you're doing and don't accept someone mischaracterizing what you're doing. That's your jurisdictional challenge, is the facts, the knowledge and the facts you need to develop, and the application that maintains your independence and separation. So, moving on to this going through the international aspects and what we're not told and what they do, and they got all these neutron detectors they want to tell us, and we're going to find this radiation, that radiation, we're going to be able to protect you all because we're here big and bad and can do it. It's all set up. They take advantage by what they don't tell you. They have this stuff already in the pipeline. The government is there to take the been told in the past, and it was up to the people to not let it do that. That on its own wasn't peace and tranquility, folks. If people haven't figured out the kind of like the uselessness of the Declaration of Independence either. We're up against another nature, and that's the problem. But we can put the words down so that those that would affect the other nature are given a bright line not to cross. And that's really all I'm talking to you about. The law is only as much as you can get the criminal to be accountable to. And you hope you do that before they do the crime. That's kind of what we try to do ahead of time. Well, what this government does is it brings on these crimes. It doesn't tell you, it says they're crimes, but it doesn't tell you that it's the one that's doing it, or it has a plan, or it's going to take advantage, never letting a good opportunity go to waste kind of idea. That I told you back in the Hebdo problem, that they were going to use the Hebdo as their 911 to bring on their, the equivalent of the USA Patriot Act. And thank you for a lot of the messages that gave me what that meant, and I don't remember it right now. It's uniting and strengthening America, whatever, on and on and on. The USA means something. It doesn't mean U.S. Patriot. It has an interesting bunch of words that those letters mean. And thank you for everybody. I didn't do it again. I didn't collect it up so I could be so smart to tell you about it. That part's not important. I'll let you find that out. But here it comes, the Hebdo issue. In fact, the picture shows Hebdo. Lawmakers back a spy bill dubbed French Patriot Act. Now, they don't have the dots after it. They don't have Patriot Act. But this exactly happened. This was predictable, folks. And look how fast it rolled out. French lawmakers voted in favor Tuesday of a new law granting state-sweeping surveillance powers despite criticism for civil society groups that have dubbed the bill the French Patriot Act. So everybody gets into tangling up these letters like words, and it's the programming. We have heard lots of people have lots of words about what this is. It's a lie. It's a crime right in our face, and people need to stand up to it. But it was predictable. So here it is. Whatever time you remember passed from Hebdo till now, I told you then that's what this was going to be. This is you don't got to be that. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. That there is a method, and it's cause and effect. It's just what they're doing. And you'd think after about this time, if they could predict that it's the French Patriot Act, they'd be able to attack it right now for the crime it is against their own people. But we hear French crickets too. I wonder what anybody. Hey, markonthebeach.yahoo.com. I'd like to hear a recording. Just give me send me a short, just maybe 5 or 10 seconds. What French crickets sound like. As we move this international method that they have, remember, this is all these things that are going on really is breads and circuses, if you will. In fact, I was thinking, we might be coming up to that discussion here in a few more points, although I got a little bit of time here. I'm really starting to believe these things like Jade Helm and 911 and all this stuff. We go on and on and on. It's all what this is that this is now the Roman Coliseum laid open to be the entire nation, and the entire world is now this Coliseum of entertainment. You got every aspect of life. You got the Christians being eaten by the lions. Now they're being the is eating the Christians, and then the Jews are being beat down by some methodology. Not behind their back, they're lobbing nukes, bombs over into Palestine. This is just one big Coliseum fight that we're all paying attention to. Jade Helm, we're going to lay it out. Are they taking martial law? Are they going to go attack Iran? Oh, well, as I've told you folks, if Jade Helm is coming after the United States of American people, and they aren't quietly and stealthily mobilizing right now to protect themselves, shame on you. Stop talking about it. Stop making big hay and sensationalism over it. That's serious. That's not talking stuff. That's action stuff now. On the other hand, if it's testing for Iran, and they've been doing some analysis that if you lay the states sideways that are involved, you can kind of roughly lay out the Middle East, and then this whole exercise is to kind of do this onslaught training for how they're going to go attack Iran. They want to go to war with Iran. Are you okay with that too? So there's things about it that are no good generally on either side. The point is, what are you doing about it? I get real tired quick about hearing everybody complain endlessly. I don't need to hear another report about it. What's going on to stop it or settle it? Lock it down. Do some substantive paper filings. Get a group of people, get in the face of the people that are deciding what's going on there, and have them bring it out. Convince the seats of decision in your counties that it's not going to happen until they give some assurances. And even then, why aren't you mobilizing if you're afraid that the military is coming against the people? There's diabolical things that FEMA's doing that people aren't even aware of. We just uncovered another one. In fact, I was able to explain it to somebody. It's coming through a county near you. I didn't realize it. They're going through agreements. FEMA's come to all the counties. They're making agreements for a mutual aid for emergencies. That's a kill. The contract's a killer for any local autonomy. And the commissioners who are ignorant or knowing that they know they're ignorant are agreeable to this nonsense. Where are you to stop it? Where are you to explain that? But this is a global thing. All the whatever they got, again, it's a big Coliseum. We're all being entertained by whatever we're entertained with, and nobody, does anything. First of all, you entered into the Coliseum and you didn't disregard it. You allow the entertainment. You allow it to be considered and promoted and continued, and you don't step out the Coliseum. Now, how do we do that if the whole world is a Coliseum? Well, you isolate yourself away, and then you start looking at the ones pulling the levers, the ones selling the tickets, the ones organizing the advertising. And you find out what they're doing to draw people in, and you go tell people, educate people on how that's a deception. I mean, that's just an idea. It applies in real ways better than I can create as a Colosseum, an abstraction. The old Roman Colosseum is our world now. And we're all sitting in the pews, in the bleachers, watching. And in places being part of it. And we sit there and buy more popcorn, drink more beer, throw our thumb up, and yeah, I like that, but no, I didn't like that over there. Hey, down, thumb down. This is what we're doing, while the people that are running the show are making the dough. Have you confined to your seats and doing nothing to stop it? And this brings us into this thing that's coming on, this promotion. I told you there was a promotion coming when I was talking about the Pope. In September, as the news just starts to hit now, as they start to unravel this new show in the Coliseum of the world here. In September, the UN launches a major sustainable development agenda for the entire planet. But what did our lawsuit do but sue sustainable development and join it? So we're already got a default judgment in law that goes against the UN. And we sued the Bar Association. Their documents say they're committed to support the UN sustainable development, which is a destruction of your life, your land, and your existence. And I hear crickets on it. Even though we've advanced this since 2013, that default's been sitting there. And it takes a little bit. Again, when you're inside when an occupied army is around you, you tread very lightly to accomplish what your mission is. That more people would help. More people would help to make more record. But they're letting you know that something's coming up in September. And I was telling you the Pope is instrumental in this global governance condition, that they will tie this whole thing together. Universal Church will be your world. Governments are nothing more than churches. The faithful believe in them. I'm talking about as bodies that make decisions more than tools that help keep the peace and tranquility like we've set up in the United States, honoring property and the property of others, and the property in others. Being respectful in the first instance, working really hard to never be disrespectful, unlike what Kerry's done in the United States and the people killing the people of Ukraine on either side. Allowing now, everyone's promoting this. Oh, look at the Nazis are coming back. No, that's just a new symbol, folks, for you in your Coliseum, to consume in your Coliseum. No one calls that out. No one calls out the players behind it. Zia West, United States, Saudi Arabia, Britain, Australia, Canada. It's on and on and on. But they're all embracing this sustainable development, though. All the other things you see going on, and this is what's going and continuing despite the fact we have a default judgment in law that says it's a treason in the United States. It's a treason in the United States. It's an ongoing unarrestable felony that the Pope is in agreement with. If you appreciate what I just said there, we have a judgment in law that says the Pope is a felon. How's that? The green Pope that he is. And then he has the audacity to come out and says that freedom of speech has its limits, and gets it wrong again, is the opinion of Justin Haskins, just 2 weeks after after reports surfaced that Pope Francis plans to put significant pressure on global leaders to fight what he believes to be the man-made imminent global warming. The leader of the world's largest church is receiving strong and worthy criticism from conservatives again. Well, see, that's a title. That's irrelevant. This time for the suggestion here is a limit to the freedom of speech in wake of the Paris attacks magazine and Charlie Hebdo, which we just talked about, the government used to throw up the surveillance, French Patriot Act, that the Pope is in agreement with. Why? Because he needs that surveillance ultimately. And you think, well, that can't be. It's what, that little bitty place over there, the Vatican. Well, you have to understand, the legal advisor to the Pope, to the Holy See, I should say, is International Bar Association, of which the Bar Association of America is a member. So this is a locked system to begin with. And those of you that are may have an objection to what I'm saying about the actual control that this organization may have, this syndicate may actually have. I mean, everyone believes that the Nazis were some kind of power. They only lasted a couple decades. This group, this syndicate has lasted for centuries. That the Green Pope wants the freedom of speech based in surveillance applications, he would agree with the Patriot Act, the sort of P-A-T-R-I-O-T Act. That you need to be aware, that you should be pretty afraid about this guy. Notwithstanding, I've just told you, we have a default judgment in law that says he's a felon to assert what he has if it affects the United States at least. Is that infallible, folks? Or is that just a criminal? Is that using the color of infallibility to cover criminal activities? See, I don't care what his belief is. I'm wondering what he's doing. Once I find out, I just identify whether or not it's hurting somebody. And what he's promoting, and how he's helping and admiring what's going on to limit this. Listen, we all know you don't go into a theater and yell fire. That's just something you just don't do. But he wants to extend this limit even greater. Now, I don't know if the French people have a freedom of speech at all. I've never really looked at that. I'm astonished that some places don't have any of that. In fact, I'm astonished that the government goes in like in Britain and says you can't say some things. That they bring up your opinion as if it was yelling fire in a crowded theater. I find that pretty fascinating, but I'm not there. I can't speak to it, and so I don't research it too much. I have enough on my plate here with all the crime going around on us and the military operations that are beyond and invisible. Everyone's focused on Jade Helm, and they don't focus on the one that's been working to control their lives this whole time. Shows me I got a bunch of dumb people around that are really wasting my time. And I think you need to identify that for yourself so your time's not wasted. And I guess that's the whole point. So the point today, cutting through the nonsense, getting through the facts, find the content, not just that there's a fact, but that the content of the fact is what it needs to be. And then you have to go look for the stuff that's not spoken. That's the omitted parts. The facts that are omitted that cause a problem. That's the harder one. That this guy comes out, this Pope comes out, says, oh, we got to have limits, and he praises the surveillance system. That should kind of bother you a bit. Why wouldn't it bother you a bit? I'd want to know about that. Maybe markonthebshow.com. That's like the 4th time I've sent my email. Maybe I'll get someone to send me stuff on point. I mean, I'm really looking for the alternative attitude, attitude, if it's an attitude I've got. Opinion, the whatever. I've supported. Bring the support. Because I don't know what I don't know, and if you have some information I don't know about, I'd like to know about it. Right? That's what we're looking for. That this guy comes up and says there's a limit to speech, and then ties it into the French Patriot Act should bother you just a little bit. That he is promoting sustainable development, and that is the main thing the United States government does, and that means he's tied to it. That should bother you a lot. And I hear crickets. He also comes out and says this, which I thought was fascinating. This is the transparency showing up. But see, I see their transparency, so they're not transparent to me. And a lot of you also, I already know this, but we'll call it another example for us all. Pope Francis, many powerful people don't want peace because they live off war. Well, what does sustainable development do but declare war on your way of life that he supports? And he's going to come up with this encyclical for climate change, the tool of the implementation of this sustainable development globally. Many powerful people don't want peace because they live off war, is him telling you he survives off of war, making war against your life. And we call it, in this country, making war on the laws of the United States, because sustainable development is the antithesis of the laws of the United States for property grants. In the minimum. I'm not talking about on and on. I just go to there, right? Let's start there. Let's start with the law of our land with our land. If you're making war with the laws of our land on the land, you are a criminal, at least. And this is supposed to be an infallible one, a pope, that's telling you, the powerful people, as if he's not one, but don't want peace because they live off war. When you realize that the Iron Mountain document talks about what do we do in times of peace, is to make really silent war. And that's what they've done. And this guy is the head, this figure is the head of this church, so-called, that's embracing sustainable development, climate change, and financial constructs and taxation on people to give to other people, that they'll be the middleman, they'll be the Guido, they'll be the organized criminal between that takes your money and pretends to give it to somebody. You need to be aware what's going on with this Pope. That shows you the writings on the wall. But understand, they're only promoting one thing, and we've already defeated it, literally. There's no fear here. It's just a matter of stepping up. And so this Pope is supposed to be infallible. He's talking about this climate change, going to make an encyclical, going to embrace it, going to go support this thing in the UN in September. It's all rolling. I told you, the road show had started. I told you that a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month. I don't know, time flies. It's that buzzing that must be out here. Anyway. That this infallible one is basing his so-called scientific review, his support, the facts that he's using on this so-called science that we hear is just a bunch of self-serving nonsense. Here's another report. If you think this guy's infallible, and you think he means well, and you think he's gracious, and he wants to humble, and you think that he's caring for people, he's basing his support on what another scientist calls an out-and-out fraud. That doesn't sound too infallible. Massive rewrite. It appears NOAA, NOAA. See, NOAA. We said Noah. I said it as a word. It's wrong. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration is what you're supposed to say when we see the letters NOAA. We're not supposed to say NOAA, but I do it. It's just one of those habits that we get into. And when you don't understand that, you're kind of you're condensing, you're cutting out a little bit of knowledge there. But anyway, it's the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, and I just did that from memory. I got no notes, so cool. I think I did it right. Again, you can go verify this. It's irrelevant if I'm wrong. The point is that we do certain things and it causes us to constrain our minds to things that may not be actually right. It gets them to get past certain barriers that we have. These people are supposed to be the premier government record keeper for climate, which not climate change, but actual weather and the history of weather, that we're supposed to look around so that people can get beyond being a farmer and throwing a hayseed out and seeing which way the wind blows. That's the way we used to do it. As a sailor looking out and seeing what color the sky was. We have to rely now on these data sets that this guy says that maybe an out fraud now. That NOAA panicked and did a massive rewrite of Maine temperature history. They used the same algorithm in the United States in general. The new official temperature for Maine between 1895 and present were lowered by an accumulated 151.2 degrees Fahrenheit between 1895 and 2002. So these facts that you see on the temperature would, if they were wrong, have a great bearing on the meme, on the propaganda that's spoken of that you would either agree or not to agree in today. Why did they lower it? Those of us that were doing kind of a logic, I had to take a little bit of time to figure this out. Why are they lowering it? Well, they called it global warming, didn't they? They have to go from some place to someplace higher. But they can't really change we're all looking at today's temperature. We can see today's temperature. So they just went back and changed the formulation for the model of their calculation. Didn't go and read didn't say this is an actual measurement. This is more of a calculated measurement. Calculated estimate is what it is. And they lowered those temperatures by 4 degrees, so by the time they get here, you see global warming. And so this author saying, in my opinion, this is out and out fraud. Why did they corrupt national climate data? And his answer is global warming is a $27 billion business on an annual basis in the U.S. alone. But that's not it. That is maybe the business. That's not what they're using global warming for. They're using it to make global control. Forget the money. The money is irrelevant. So I'll absolutely credit the gentleman for working it out. And now his problem is, since he's a scientist and he's recognized the fraud that the NOAA is creating to reduce temperatures pretty much 2 to 3 degrees in every year, he cannot trust government data. And that is, I hope, your takeaway. You cannot trust. I told you, folks, long time before, science is going to be is prostrate before the truth. We've gone into a whole new era. And they use statistics to do this, and figures, as they say, figures don't lie, but liars figure. This is what we're on. This is what the NOAA. Now remember, the NOAA is also involved with the IUCN group of International Horde of Trespassers. The NOAA was picked up by the Commerce Department because they wanted best science department in their holding, because the Commerce Department is commerce and they need to be able to tax you because of your commerce interference and activities in the world as they bring sustainable development, which is the green agenda, which is the green pope, which is the pope, which is doing the encyclical that says this is all science and you're a heretic if you don't believe it. This is the fact. And it's all a lie. It's all based on a fraud. That this gentleman says I can no longer trust climate data and energy information ultimately drawn from the United States government. Locally, I know I now have to determine if they got their data from NOAA. This makes research a lot tougher. Wow, that's a big statement. You need to understand that's the fact and the truth, and you need to start understanding that. That's what they're giving us. The Pope is supporting everything he's doing on things that are being manipulated by the minions that are advancing this universal church that has no thing but making war on its agenda. And making war on you. You think there's war going on in Syria? No, this is another war. This is the war that goes on, that they use all that other stuff as distraction as well. It's not real. But if you're breads and circuses, you're sitting in the Coliseum and you're focused on that battle over there in Syria too hard, and you know I'm on record to say that's no good, and that needs to stop. And we see now Ukraine was no good. We shouldn't have went. The United States, the United States government should not have been over there. And we find out now that they're going to lose, so they got to get out gracefully now. The United States buffoons got caught. This is another war. This is the bigger war. And they're trying to use all this science on you, and it's a fraud. One, I told you this a long time ago, and now we're getting it proven. Finally, there's some people with integrity and conscience that are actually standing up to make the comment. However, even where they make the whistleblow, they out it, they show it, we got to be careful on their claims. As I was telling you, listen to that last 2 weeks, I was talking about the model that could influence ice stability. Nonsense. Absurd. How does a model do that? See, this is they throw their little bit of ego in there, always trying to show us some authority beyond what they actually can do, which is a bunch of kids looking at Mother Nature that they don't understand. It's pretty wondrous, actually. But Heartland had a an interview with someone named Hal Doiron, retired NASA scientist. The right climate stuff. Okay, play on terms. Right climate stuff, having the right stuff, being from NASA, great, I love it. But they actually took possession of that right stuff. Right climate stuff is actually a research team. That they're saying that they have the right climate stuff. They actually out the condition, and they refer to the Pope's climate conference. They show that this is all going to be based on this nonsense that he's accepted, and there's a reason why. It's not. He doesn't know that he knows that it's not correct. There's an agenda, and it's whoever has the best propaganda, the best promotion, the best whoever can beat Obama in the advertising of themselves. In this case, is going to win. And so, if you got to be a formidable foe if you're going to go up against the Obama people if the Pope picks them up. That promotion program fooled a nation. It fooled people I'm hearing now coming on and saying, I was fooled. That's fine, but that means that you can be fooled. Now, I'm not, anyway, you know where I was all the time. I called that out. But they use advertising, and they advertise on promotions very, very, very stealthily, very, very, very effectively. That this is what's been going on right now. This is just a brute force drumming of climate change and sustainable development without many people, and I can't say anybody, we did, called it out for the felony that it is, the treason that it is in America. I don't know if it's a treason or a felony elsewhere, but I know it's that in America. That the PhDs are coming out to say, hey, wait a minute. We got a team together, and we started looking at a lot of this climate thing. We have the right stuff. And the right stuff is right enough, I'll tell you that part, that it's just right enough. It says that the work about CO2 and its effect from using human causation, this NASA retired PhD says their team shows that has minimal effect. And I would have to ask, how did they even know that? So I have a problem. Why do we know that that's even a problem? I have a little report that pops up in the same week to say that. Let me get to this one, concurring that science is often flawed. It's time we embrace that. Absolutely. All we are is like we're scienceologists. We're just studying the things we think we know are right. It's all based on an idea and whether or not we can prove the repeatability of the idea. And even then we find out that may not be actual reality. It's our best guess at the time, and it works enough. But it's coming out, folks. If you had needed more fuel, more support for your bag of facts that are actually reality, it's coming out. Dietrich Stapel explained his preferred method for manipulating scientific data in detail that would make any nerd's jaw drop. This is a guy that was actually relied upon for information. He explained how he does it. I'm going to go through on and on. Now, he was caught in 2011 and suspended. He was a social psychologist, though, folks. You don't think this is how they're messing with you. He conducted attention-grabbing experiments on social behavior. He made stuff up. He made the statistics to reach the outcome. This is now, if we knew about it, we heard about it, these are people being found out for actually admitting they do this. And this is knowledge that these people like the Pope know, or should know, to be very cautious when they're making global decisions that affect everybody's life. That when you hear the prior science, the right stuff, which they made mistakes too, they're not that right, the right stuff group, task force, talk that their carbon dioxide levels have minimal effect, I would bring up this next story. When I saw this the same week, it's information that comes together that you put together. You put your own dots together to get a better truth. That carbon dioxide levels break 400 parts per million milestone. Concentrations of CO2 greenhouse gas in the atmosphere reached global records for global averages in March. Figures show in a stark signal ahead of the Paris climate talks. Now they're saying, oh, this is important stuff. This is what we're going to use. The greenhouse gases, this greenhouse gas, there's a whole lot of other ones they want to ignore, like they want to ignore the sun. But this carbon dioxide is going to 400 parts per million. The other report of the right stuff scientists said that it had minimal effect. I will propose that it has absolutely, it may have an effect. The minimal effect may be that it actually cools the atmosphere. Because if this is record-breaking at 400 parts per million, what happened to the 20 years of heat, the failure of the heat to go up and actually decline over the last 20? That points out to the better theory that NASA found out, or at least the data showed, that the carbon dioxide acts as a thermal regulator. And we're actually seeing the lack of energy now coming through with the thermal regulator increasing and the decrease of the the decrease of the temperature. We're actually seeing the truth. Yes, it might be minimal effect, but it's in a negative way. It's not in a heat sense. It's in a cooling sense, if it has any effect at all. When I started talking, I was going to say it has no effect because we're seeing a decline. And then I forgot. I just remembered, and putting that other fact into play. It's a thermal regulator. Now, I reported on that behind the Woodshed. It's not like unknown. It's out for us to know. I just keep it together, try to keep it together, and we try to keep the facts as we go. We hold our facts secluded against anybody else's facts. The ones we prove to ourselves, we hold those with dearly and tenaciously, and we keep applying them our way. We make our own observations. That when I saw 400 parts per million, we've beat a milestone in the globe, at least man's time. And then when you find out, this matches some time in prehistoric era, that you find out that this is not man-made at all, actually. And if it is man-made, it doesn't matter. The Earth will go to these levels and much higher, as I've told you already before, years ago. That the Right Stuff group, which shows that carbon dioxide, they say, has minimal effect, doesn't actually go on to tell you that it's actually having maybe a reverse effect when we now see the news that we've reached a milestone in carbon dioxide levels, and yet we look over the 20 years of time almost, not exactly, but close enough, and we see a decline in temperatures that the Pope and the UN could care less about. Why? Because it's not about the climate change either. It's not about that at all. That's a tool for your consumption in the global Coliseum that you're enjoying and acting as a participant in. So how does this come out? Now, we talk about the Bar Association being a seated decision, and then you see these anomalous sounding cases. But see, there's a limit, and this is the thing. I was also talking to a few people this week. There's a limit for some reason. What allows us to be protected in using the law is actually someone's perception of their accountability to it by a third party that might come in and look. That's what you're actually dealing with, because there is no law and the whole system is an illusion. So you're dealing with people. That those people have to be held accountable in their own spot. It's like their peers look in. If the occupier makes it obvious his occupation, you find out as the native. Well, listen. The number one rule for an occupying force is don't piss off the natives. That you see this regulation going on with these court cases, that they'll push the envelope, but not so far as it exposes them to be the occupier. That this climate change we reported again on the Behind the Woodshed about this. There was a lawsuit that some teens brought in Oregon, and I told you this is it's a non-issue actually. But what I was focused on was the public trust doctrine. They were advancing. These teens didn't do it. These were attorneys. The attorneys are actually being probably Lewis and Clark at university. There are other law universities, all breeding these usurpers into the system to accept this the commitment toward sustainable development and climate change, to promote it. Those are the people that advance this cause by the teenagers, the future generations, folks. that they're trying to advance this thing called the public trust doctrine into all aspects of your life. And I talked a little bit about that. And I told you at the time, it's limited in this capacity, the public trust doctrine, even with respect to climate change, it doesn't matter. The public trust doctrine, if it can be such, is limited to navigable waters and submerged lands. I told you this a long time ago. I said I'll be interested to see if the courts feel bold enough to expand that, or if they realize that they're going to be outed if they do. Well, it appears that court case decision has happened. The Oregon teens who had sought to force lawmakers to work harder on a plan to folks, these aren't even actionable. But here we are. The court's entertaining it to give an answer. They end up giving a right-ish answer on the public trust statement, but they give a license. Potential wink and a nod to future potential problems. So I'm going to keep track of this, but for you as well, this is how they do it. The state lawmakers, they sued to make the state lawmakers work harder on a plan to reduce carbon emissions and stave off climate change, have struck out a second time with a state judge. On Monday, Lane County Circuit Court Judge Karsten Rasmussen agreed with the state argument that a judge lacks authority to essentially rewrite state laws. So they're making this as was a separation of powers. They agreed. I would have to agree at that level. But I'm not interested in that more than to hear what they're doing with this public trust doctrine, which underlied this whole thing. Rasmussen wrote that the decision in favor of the teams would violate the state's separation of powers doctrine, and whether the court thinks global warming is or is not a problem, and whether the court believes the legislature's greenhouse gas emissions goals are too weak, too stringent, or altogether unnecessary is beside the point, Rasmussen wrote. These determinations are not judicial functions. They are legislative functions. He also rejected the teens' central arguments. While Oregon's public trust doctrine holds the state governments keep the natural resources of a state in trust for current and future residents, understand he doesn't say generations here, but he does talk to the aliens doing business, which I find fascinating. What about all those of us that aren't residents that are just grantees? How about that? What about the property owners here? Anyway, he goes on to say, it applies only to submerged and submersible lands. He disagreed with the teens' contention, which was really just a bar member in training, advancing his cause along an environmental gangrene agenda to support this. The teens' contention is that it extends to the atmosphere, water, beaches, and shorelands. So, very important decision to bring out the truth of the limit. So now you all know what that limit is, but he's given a nod and a wink to the legislature, and apparently there's not going to be a denunciation, and it's going to be a breach of the state's agreement in their default judgment that we have against them imposing this, that he's giving a wink and a nod that they still believe they can bring climate change, global warming, into legislation as part of a carbon emissions goal. Now, the state has already made a carbon tax imposition, which is as illegal, but these people are criminals, and it takes a little bit of time to arrest the bank robber, if you will. If he runs away and he gets away, and you got to track him down. So that's what we're doing at this point. We're going to get around to that. In the meantime, the BLM stepped up to have to be controlled as well, and so we've got a lot on our plate. But I wanted you to hear that the public trust doctrine does not extend to the air and the above and the land. It only is relative to the state's obligation to protect the common that the state protects in the submerged and submersible lands. In other words, it's like navigable areas. So climate change cannot intrude, actually, notwithstanding the wink and a nod that the judges gave that maybe the legislature could do that. Another thing on your life that people are allowing, not without resistance now, but I'm talking about the seats of decision are allowing to come in until it's challenged. All these things that are these sustainable development impositions, whether you recognize them or not, they are all going to come in unless you step up and challenge them. That's the cricket problem. If we stop being crickets on all this and we start effectively going after these things in the right way, we can literally throw them back out where they belong, out of the country if they're right anywhere. But there's another thing called Common Core, and there was a link I got called Hilarious and Honest Video about Common Core. And understand the player here. The Chamber of Commerce is another player inside this imposition of sustainable development. Again, commerce is commercial, and this is the regulatory authorities that come and bring their influence to bring these processes on that control business, essentially. And just remember that producers are not commerce. So that's one of the things that we're proving out that they can't discuss. But Chamber of Commerce is a big player in all this subversion, and they name the Chamber of Commerce, Bill Gates, Pearson, and others who stand to profit from Common Core have spent billions of dollars trying to sucker Americans into believing Common Core is right for America. Now, there's a video, it's pretty cool. What I have got away with not going through the video, but how I don't remember the name of this guy who puts this together, how he puts this together is very interesting in the video of how he humorously just destroys this whole thing. I wish I could do that. I was looking at this. I wish I could do that real live, but I realized this guy's got a whole crew of people making his comedy, and he's a good presenter for it. So kind of like what David Letterman might be. A lot of people behind the scenes working to be funny, and I think it's needed. I just can't do it behind Woodshed. That I think you need to see this. I think if you made the list of absurdities that are pointed out in here, for those of you into Common Core, those of you that are looking to address certain things even so, other than Common Core, apply the logic he's applied to out the absurdities to show that these are just not, even if you had you thought you had an authority, there's no rational reason to apply these things. The ramifications are just horrendous, and so we shouldn't be taking them on. But this is the effect of the government imposing, and the Pope is in agreement with this. The UN is in agreement with this. Remember, rights of child is really where all this stuff comes through. And they do it for the good of the children, right? Everything's done in the good of some innocent helpless. And then all the other people, like the men, are the brutes that are outed, and the men just apparently agree with that, and don't take the responsible steps to stop it. And there's a way to do that. And that way has changed, and it changes as we move along, but it's not unknowable. It's just to do it, just to step up. You learn it really quickly. And then for myself, I'm here to, if you got a question on a point, on a particular thing, as I said, I'll give you what I know. I may not know it all, but I may give you just enough to get a word started. It's kind of like having writer's block. You don't quite know how to get the project written. You don't quite know how to get the book started. Well, I might give you that opening paragraph that you see then at least a direction. Doesn't mean that open paragraph will even stay that way, but at least you have that paragraph to focus your attention to get the steps going. I do that all the time. I'm fine, and I do this. It's a habit now. I've got to buckle down and do that first. Really focus on that first. What am I talking about in this paper? What is my objective in this paper? And if I don't get it written down, that paper sits and doesn't get written. When I write that down, I go to work. As soon as I write that down, it seems like something flips. You get into the mode and the mode of getting it done. Now, we'll go back later and maybe change that first paragraph, but at least it gets as they said, the juices flowing in the project. You have to do that. Anyway, so this is an interesting video about Common Core. It's another one of those aspects that are coming down through an external foreign imposition on us. We'll have to throw that off for those of you that are into doing that. This means everything about your future generations, your posterity, your sons and daughters, really, in their future. And it's a big destructive force. It's being used even in the military, and it's subverting the whole it's gutting your society. This is what this is all about. Over time, influence the gutting of your society, and it transforms over that. Remember, the bacteria, the GMOs you take in, and the bacteria in your stomach, it changes the gut bacteria, which changes your nutrition, it changes your response, which changes the cells and the integrity of those cells. It's gutted. Your system is gutted by this pollution, this adulteration. It's the same thing in your society with your education. It comes in and guts, it adulterates the purity and the function we have to be responsible to stop that. So if we can, and we're reminded in the same week of this that the lunacy behind Common Core, Hillary Clinton, whatever she is going to be, her support, the propaganda, the funky monkey they use to get kids all involved, and the props that they use to entice you and your little ones. We're reminded about government imposition. This is not a new thing. This is on and on. The government wants to control, and a link came through. Lost Schools, a photo that launched a revolution. We need, if it's a revolution that's the word, then that's what we need. There was a picture that was done, the iconic photo of Amish children fleeing into Iowa cornfields, children of the corn, Iowa cornfields, to escape school and law enforcement officials who were there to enforce compulsory public education laws. Turns 50 this fall. There was an outcry, an organized resistance that forever changed the laws in Iowa regarding education, that you need to do now with the onslaught of Common Core and other things that are coming up that have the same effect, force and effect, under different names. I won't read through this. It just all this history that we've seen before, that's in our face, that we don't use as empowering us, that we, the people, really can do something. And like I said, in our small way, as slow as it might be, methodically as we have to walk, attempting not to jeopardize ourselves at every turn, but still becoming effective if in this battlefield we find ourselves, we're able to see we do cause the change we need. We cause this return to a more objective lifestyle, a more sane lifestyle, a more rational lifestyle, a more wholesome lifestyle. It's not a utopia. It's that we at least have the decisions that we make, and we don't have to, as I've been telling people in the mining community, for me, part of this is really, it's selfish. I just want to not have to go out in the forest or in the mountain when I do mining and have to look over my shoulder like some government bureaucrat's going to come and cause a detriment in my life. I just want to go to work, be left alone to do it, and produce what I'm told and obligated to produce. That's all. Why is that so hard? And why is it that's so hard and no one else really says a lot? I don't mean type in on a computer. I mean actually learns the techniques to stop it and learns more as you go in case it doesn't, to keep pressing and persisting. But Lost Schools, kids running into cornfields, I mean, almost, if I get real tight with it, I get kind of what a tragedy. How sad is this? Kids running into cornfields to escape government imposition of education. I sit here, I start to think about it. It's just, we've allowed this over and over and over, and we've resisted it over and over and over. It's time to step up, certainly on this Common Core. The picture came in the same week. I can't believe that it wasn't relevant, at least for me, to notice. This is a repetition. We've got to stop this stuff right in its tracks, and we are able to stop it. It just takes the more of us. But transitioning here a little bit, I'll get back to this breads and circuses type idea, the Coliseum. It's like we're in some Roman Coliseum watching the Christians being fed to the lions and whatever the battles are, the slaves being beat up by the centurions, or whatever we're told happened. I wasn't there, I don't know. But I find it in this concept of the entertainment side of all this, that we're watching what the play, the football game, the fake war, the fake division, the fake real people are dying on this case, but I mean the cage fight, the global cage fight. What? When I saw this next story, I just was wondering, why is it this guy is saying anything? Getting back to Jade Helm a little bit, what it all means, all this nonsense and distraction. Why is this guy stepping up to be the spokesman for it? I looked at it and go, this guy's just a celebrity movie actor. Oh yeah, he did. He kicked some tail when he was doing his sport, but it was still sport. And yeah, he was real effective about that. But why is this guy, Chuck Norris, karate kicks trust in government ahead of U.S. military drills? Why did this guy even come up that nobody else did? Maybe an analysis of the media as well. But just the fact I saw this guy come up, and I could care less one way or the other. Whatever. I don't even know what he does. I just kind of know what I've heard he does. He's a movie star, I guess, as well. I don't even know the quality of his movies, to tell you the truth. I don't watch like I said, I don't do all that. I just haven't. Why is this guy even part of this? Just look like, why is the Pope a celebrity in the face of the UN promotion? Why is anybody in our face at all? It has to be an analysis. That this is, again, it's a social engineering, breads and circuses that we get all involved. Some of you don't. But I see so many emails that we're calling out this thing, getting involved. Well, now that Chuck Norris is involved, that must be making it right. He kicked their tail. But what was also very important here that I wanted us to focus on, because there's always the truth within the play, within the act, was he talks about the karate. The title is Chuck Norris Karate Kicks Trust in Government. And this is related to Jade Helm, and what does it really mean, and what does it really do? Well, why focus just on Jade Helm? I've told you before, trust is all you got. If you can't trust, it's over. It's over. Fiduciary breach is done. Your trust is over. It's done. I've told you this years and years ago. Why this guy steps up and why I didn't, well, I probably wouldn't let them take a picture of me. I was always behind the camera, folks, so I was never really one in front. But I seem to work best behind the scenes. Why is his words on with all his, he's got his nice shirt and the makeup and his hair just right. Why is he coming on to be the voice when someone like myself has been saying this problem for years, and the unqualified one agreed when he said if people can't trust government, we're going to have some problems here. Why is this guy, Chuck Norris, even out here talking and said karate kicks trust? No. The law regarding trust and fiduciary law is what kicks trust, where you have none. That I hear crickets on. I don't need this celebrity. That he's up here tells me there's a problem. I don't know what it is. It's probably an inert problem as well. It's just something for us to focus on. Those of you that believe in Chuck Norris, even as a joke, I mean, there's a lot of funny jokes about Chuck Norris, I guess, so you can't go anywhere without having Chuck Norris do something for you. So he's a meme as well. That he pops up in the middle of this is to speak and to continue the breads and circuses, the Coliseum fighting, the stage fight, the worldwide wrestling, the cage matches. It's to continue that for you. That I've spent I talk about this, I'm wasting my time talking about it. Certainly if you already know about it, I know I'm not wasting my time, but to call it out, to take the time, I know there's other more important things to call out. If we were to not be the crickets, if we weren't being crickets, I probably wouldn't talk about it. I'd be answering everybody's, well, we wanted to do this, it didn't work, what do you expect? Or what did you want, what else can we try? Or this is what we're thinking about doing, here's where we've read the law, this is what it says, have you had experience there? Or we'd be dealing with that thing. Because Obama said it. You can't trust the government. I said, he goes, you're going to have a problem. I said, we have a problem, folks. And we had crickets. NDAA, and we have crickets. We have a problem here, folks, and we have crickets. You can't have crickets. You can't have Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is not kicking anything. I don't care how bad he was. I don't care how fast he could kick me into the soil. It doesn't matter. And yet here he is, this figure, this thing, that is the example of the word, of the lack of trust, that only a small segment of people will actually believe in anyway, and the rest kind of let it go. That's the other danger about this. That I just have to point out, in this cage match, global cage match, that he pops up to talk about this is just seemed like an anomaly to me. It's more of a division. That you get involved and that you get over thinking that it's saying that he's just now made the greatest statement in the world to out the government. Who stops it? If you failed, if there's a trust failure at all, it's over. And I hear crickets. I hear more complaining. I see more emails. Just whining about it. Instead of going out, listen, we can't trust you, so you will stop. This is not you having any say and trying to cajole us into agreement. You breach the trust. It's over. Go back home, figure something else out. Come back to us with a better plan if we trust you now. You had no authority to breach this trust. You need to be gone. We need to replace you with someone who is not going to breach the trust. Every time we find breaches of trust, we have the crickets. And I don't get that part, but that's the way we are. Another breach of trust, exposed and proven, I guess. It's just proven, just confirmed, and we still hear the crickets. CIA myth that torture led to bin Laden is finally dead. In other words, the myth, the lie, the championing of torture was giving us information. As we've already reported, behind the Woodshed didn't work. They've already admitted this is another exposure, but it's also tied to a drama. And this has captured a lot of people. This Seymour Hersh thing, I'm not going to talk about it. It just pops up again. The ghost of Osama. That torture, was involved. We already been told that it doesn't work. We've already been told that's all an illusion. And that should have pointed to the distrust, the trust breach that the people who are doing it has given cause to us. And I hear crickets. People under license of government, under a color of authority of government, doing these breaches. And I'm not talking about breaking the law. I'm talking about a trust breach. It's a completely separate thing. It's something you don't fix by a penalty. You fix it by ouster. And I hear crickets. I hear drama, like the Seymour. I don't even want to get into that. It's just a bunch of drama. They're bringing it up again, regurgitating this nonsense. For those of you on the side of the Coliseum that wanted to see the ghost of Osama resurrected, they gave it to you. Right in line with some other things coming down. Well, which one are you going to watch now? The breach of trust. I was shocked at this. I think this actually came from Shelley, linked through the Twitter, from RT. The breach of trust that we don't speak out against. They have no defense against the breach of trust. And this is the thing I don't understand why we haven't addressed that as people, as our main line of protection and defense, actually, in this offense that they have, this offense that they keep putting on us. That psychiatric drugs kill 500,000 Western adults annually with few positive benefits, leading scientist says. I still can't believe that number. 500,000 people. I can't even believe that's real. On just psychiatric drugs, the governments give license to kill people. Again, the breach of trust here it has to shut that system down. If that's true, you have to shut the system down. Like someone says, well, you got to fix the judicial system. No, it's broke. Shut it down. We found there's felons in the seats of decision. Extract that. Shut it down. It's a felony going on against people. You can't have justice, so there's going to be no justice lost when you remove it, and people are going to be running amok to kill you. What happened to your own self-reliance to protect yourself anyway? Folks, 500,000 Western adults, these insects that we are killed by psychiatric drugs. These are the psychologists that have been given license to fabricate things. I'm shocked, literally shocked. I cannot believe this number. 500,000 people a year are dying. And we hear crickets. That could be you. You're on psychiatric drugs, folks. That could be you. Whatever you need them for, that could be you. You need to be you need to step up despite that disability, whether it's been imposed on you or not. You need to solve it for yourself. 500,000 people, you could be next. Was someone that's been given a license to say that you get to have that, and it's safe enough. I was stunned. I'm really to the point of almost speechless. I can't believe that.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.